Look, your greatest strength can always be your greatest weakness. And humility is definitely one of those.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Fireside Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Turkington, and on the show today, we've got James Laughlin. James, a performance coach. He's also a best-selling author and a multiple-time world champion, which is pretty exciting. So, hey, James, thanks for coming on, man. It's great to have you.
Chris, a pleasure to join you on the show. Happy to be here at the Fireside Podcast.
Nice. And hearing that Northern Irish accent, really strong connections with home. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. So look, you've worked with a lot of high performers, man. What are you starting to see holding them back at that level? You know, a lot of them have probably optimized themselves to a very high level, but what are some of the things you're starting to see are holding them back when they get there?
A couple of things that really are obvious, like self-doubt. So people that you might not imagine have self-doubt actually have a lot of it. You know, even I had a leader of a country sitting with me for about 2 days. And at the end of the day, he's like, "Hey, James, do you think that was okay? Do you think like what I did there, do you think they liked it?" I was like, "Mate, you ran the country for 8 years. Yes, they loved it." But there was this level of self-doubt. And I think that creeps in when people have been in a role for a long time and maybe they are the best. It's like there's only one way you can go. And so often they start to self-doubt. So that would be the first thing that comes to mind for sure.
Yeah, cool. Which I guess that's such a human thing. Like it doesn't matter what level you get to, the imposter syndrome's real. You know, we all doubt ourselves from time to time. And sometimes it's nice just to get that little bit of encouragement, right? Hey man, you're doing a bloody good job. You're heading in the right direction. Just little things, eh?
100%. It doesn't need to be the big things. And often when I'm coaching people, just a tiny little bit of positive reinforcement can be enough for them to turn the corner. And you and I, like, we're no different. Like you and I we operate the same as any other human, and we do need positive feedback. And if you look at the habit loop, like part of the habit loop is that there's got to be some kind of reward. And that reward could be as simple as a pat on the back. You know, we were talking about football earlier. You played a bit of football. When you're having a crap day, you need one of your teammates to go, "Nah, good shot or good tackle."
Yeah. Yeah. I think my old man gave me a bit of advice, and coaches through the years, they're like, hey man, never underestimate the power of a kind word. Like it can be the one thing that somebody just needs to keep them going. Eh?
100%. Yeah, we're all the same.
Yeah. And like when you're dealing with these really high performing people, leaders, whatever it might be, they're just people fundamentally. But what are you doing to help them through that imposter syndrome? You know, what does that kind of look like, James?
Yeah, so I help them with lots of different things, depending on whether they're athletes, business leaders, politicians. But if we look specifically at that self-doubt piece, often I will challenge them to do two things. So one is a PVJ, so a private victory journal. So what are all your little private victories that nobody knows about? Like getting into that team when you were 11, or graduating school, or buying your first home, or asking that first person out on a date, whatever it is, like have somewhere that you capture all of the little things that were victories to you. And in these times of doubt or that self-imposter syndrome kicking in, go back and look at that stuff and go, I can do this. I've done it before. I mean, Chris, I've spoke to audiences of 5 and audiences of 5,000. And I'll tell you what, every time I go to speak to an audience, I'm nervous. Doesn't matter what size it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same. Of course, every time I'm about to record or speak with anyone, of course, you get that. Man,
100%.
am I prepared for this? Is it going to go well? Like just that shitty radio station in the back of your head. Eh?
It really is. And I go back to, I've got this little album on my phone with like photos of me on stages that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I spoke on that stage. Or photos of me coaching someone I used to look up to. I'm like, my God. And I look at that not to kind of blow the ego up, but to go, I'm nervous as hell, but I can do this. I've done it before. Just get out there and do it. So that's the first thing I would urge. And every listener that's listening right now can do that. Just get a journal and write, what are all the little things and the big things that I've won with? The next one's a bit more confronting. So I run an event every year called High Performance Leadership down in Christchurch, and I ask the entire audience to do this. But I want to ask your listener to do it right now. So they're going to get their phone and they're going to write a message. And it's going to be, hi, I'm working on myself at the minute and I want to grow and I want to learn more about myself. Can you please tell me what's a positive trait that you see in me that you'd like to have more of in yourself? And you send that same text to 8 people in your life, people that there's mutual respect with. So it could be people that you work with, could be family members, loved ones, friends, but send that same message to 8 people. And that comes back with the most incredible insights that you never knew about yourself. It's one of the most rewarding exercises.
Yeah, that's super cool. And like that's one thing anybody who's done, any type of feedback, 360 degree or whatever it might be, you think that people don't notice, but they notice, They notice some crazy stuff that just wouldn't even register with you.
Percent. Yeah, they can see the blind spots and the things that you don't see.
Yeah, that's cool. And so, you talk a lot about habits, and we talk a lot about habits on the show. And what do you see with people, high performers, leaders, habits that serve them really well up front, but then as they get more successful and further in their careers, those habits may not necessarily serve them anymore or may even become a derailer? Like, what sort of habits do you see that are helpful early, but then can maybe become unhelpful later in the game?
Yeah, great question. Being the yes man or the yes woman early in your career, awesome. Smart thing to do. If you're in a new industry, new career, in a new community, even, yes, I'm up for that. Yes, I'll come to that event. Yes, count me in. Yes, I'll always say yes. However, when you get to a certain stage in your career, let's say you're in sport or business, and you're busy as hell, you've maybe got a young family, you've got a mortgage to pay, you've got a LinkedIn thing that's blowing up, and your emails are blowing up, and your texts never stop. Sounds like most small business owners, right?
It's happening.
It's that. It's nuts. So that's going to be chaos. If you're the yes person, then you're going to implode. So I've got a friend who's a former Crusader rugby player and very philanthropic. He's a real estate agent, will say yes a lot. And in the last couple of years has been learning to say no, because his yeses to other people and their needs ended up being no's for the people that mattered most, his family or his health. So that's probably the thing that I think is a big strength as a habit to start with, but can be a massive weakness as the person builds.
It was something I heard a while ago, and I've probably said it a few times, but it always becomes the same old principles coming to the surface, But I think I asked, what was the difference between somebody who's just performing at an average level and somebody who's performing at a really high level? Like, what is that person doing that I'm not? And the answer or the reply was, it's not what they're doing, it's probably what they're not doing that sets them apart from everybody else. And that speaks to that ruthless focus and ability to prioritize what's important.
100%. And I think that the highest performers, in fact, one of the chapters in my book is called High Performers Say No a Lot. And they're very happy to say no. Like the people that I want to sit down with and learn the most from often are the people that you get a small little time in their diary. It's 25 minutes and it's 7 months out. So like the first time I chatted to a prime minister, it was like, yes, he'll chat to you, but he won't chat to you for another 6 months and it'll be for 25 minutes. And at the 24-minute mark, someone will come in and say, it's almost time to wrap up. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And then as I thought about it more, I was like, actually, this is genius.
Yeah.
That person needs to say no and needs to push me 6 months out and needs to keep me to 25 minutes. Because otherwise they won't be a high performer. They won't run the country well or run the company well, depending on what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And at what point does a high performer start to seep into somebody's ego and that starts to become unhelpful? Like, do you see that happening and what does it look like? And how do you maybe manage that in yourself or in people you're working with?
Yeah, great question, Chris. Look, I think that success often breeds complacency.
Yeah.
And arrogance kicks in. You see a team, for example, that's maybe doing real well, they're winning, and all of a sudden they're full of themselves and the shit doesn't stink, and it's just absolute arrogance. That is where we start to see teams and individuals start to slump. So for me, it's about staying grounded. My dad was always awesome. So as a kid, I was very competitive as a pipe band drummer. So I think, bagpipes and drums, right? Growing up in Ballyclare, there wasn't a lot to do. And there was probably a lot of things I could do that probably weren't good for me, at the pub and hanging out with interesting folk.
They do drumming was
very 100%. So drumming was positive, and it was the thing that got me into my headmaster's good books. I ended up going to the World Championships at 13, and I won the quarterfinals and I won the semifinals, and I'm about to play in the finals. And my dad just has a quiet chat. And if he wasn't Northern Irish, he could be Kiwi. Humility is really important.
Yes.
And he says, son, look, you're going great and it's awesome. You've done that. But just remember, keep your boots on the ground. You're probably not going to win this. It's going to be hard to win it. And it's your first time. And he didn't do it to kind of burst my bubble. He did it to kind of go, just remember, like, keep your feet in the ground. Don't get too full of yourself. A couple of good wins doesn't mean, you're God's gift. It was the greatest advice. And I think about that often, just keeping your boots on the ground. So with athletes, with big leaders, politicians, I'm not afraid to remind them that they put their underwear on the same way I do,
Correct. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You're just another human.
Put their pants on one leg at a time, eh? And that's in the All Blacks book. I'm terrible for remembering names, but they talk about leaders sweep the sheds, and that's where they take the most senior players in the side, most caps, the most mana, and they'll get that broom and they'll sweep the sheds, all the shit off the shed's floor. That intentional act of humility and reminding themselves where they come from.
It's so powerful. I mean, those simple things. I brought Finn, my little boy, back to Northern Ireland a few years ago, mainly to see family, but also to remind him where he's from. Like, this is who you are. This is what makes you, you. And it's very humble. I mean, Ballyclare, we talked about it before. We're both from Ballyclare, you and I. And it's not a place where there's a lot of affluence and wealth and, big things happening. It's a lovely, small little town and very humble. I wanted Finn to remind, like, this is where you're from, dude. This is who you are. And don't forget that.
Do you see times where humility is not helpful? That can be leaders, high performers, people in general. It doesn't really matter. When does humility start to get in the way?
Look, your greatest strength can always be your greatest weakness. And humility is definitely one of those. I think Kiwis definitely suffer from this. I've dealt with a lot of high-performing Kiwis, but they're almost overly humble.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, dude, you're a rock star. You're the best in the world. Would you back yourself? Oh, yeah, nah, not bad. I'm like, dude, you're the best. Like, just embrace it. Fly the flag, jump up and down a little bit. Let's pop champagne.
Oh, you just won an Olympic gold medal. Yeah, it was okay.
Exactly. If that was the Americans, they'd be jumping up and down, going crazy. There'd be fireworks display, That is a downside. Northern Ireland and New Zealand both, I think, very similar cultures in terms of don't over-celebrate yourself. It's not a good look. But actually, I think it's something we need to do more of in this part of the world, is celebrate the little things, celebrate the victories, get people around us that want to celebrate. Because if we become overly humble, we end up not enjoying the victories. We end up not enjoying the process, and it just becomes work. So I think that the humility thing has to be definitely balanced.
Yeah, I agree. And we've been thinking and talking a lot around tall poppy syndrome, and, wrote a post on that recently, something that we've been doing a lot of thinking around, and how, yes, in New Zealand and Northern Ireland, that incessant urge to want to keep your head below the parapet, eh? So, that egalitarian, everybody's equal type thing. But what it means is people shy away from trying to attain their ambition and fulfill their full potential. And it's just like, I don't think there's anything to be gained from playing small. Like, you could be exactly what the world needs or a person needs right now. And how will we ever realize that if you just sit in the shadows? I think it's a terrible thing. It's something about our culture here in New Zealand that I don't particularly like. What's your thoughts on, like, tall poppy syndrome in general?
Yeah, hate it. I absolutely hate it. I mean, I've been the victim of, for sure, at times, and it's not pleasant. And you do kind of start to go, well, maybe I shouldn't keep swinging big, and I should maybe just aim a little lower. And just, I was sitting with Richie McCaw, maybe, how many years ago would it be now? 8 years ago. And he just became a new dad. I just became a new dad, first-time dads. And we're chatting about fatherhood. So I was just asking him, what kind of values do you want your child to have? He says, oh, really just one. And Gemma and I are keen on that one value, and that's kindness. I was like, oh, that's awesome, man. So we're chatting about kindness and where it comes from. And he brought up this tall poppy syndrome. And he said, look, James, I definitely was on the receiving end of it. Not everyone loved my success. He says, but the thing they didn't appreciate was that my mindset was, if you're here to cut me down, I'm going to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard to be the very best I can be. It's not going to have a negative impact on me. I think that's the mindset we've got to adopt. Take big swings, expect that people will be naysayers and critics, but use that to fuel your success and your drive.
Yeah, I was speaking with Sarah Robb, and she's a real weapon, and she spoke about that. It's like, good, what I'm doing is making you feel uneasy, or it's holding up a mirror to you. Good. that might be what you need to get the kick up the ass to do something about it in the future. Obviously, she's far more eloquent than me, but
That's good.
that was the nuts of what I took out of it is that's making you feel insecure right now. Good. Maybe that'll be the fuel you need further down the line to start getting after it and working on the things that you know you need to work on.
100%. It's fuel for growth, right?
Fuel, man. Yeah.
And I love seeing other people do things way better than me. You know, I look at from a podcast perspective. I was like, yeah, I've had some awards and accolades and I've had some great people on, but I'm not Diary of a CEO. You know what I
No,
mean? Like I looked at him and it's like, I'm not looking at him going, you know, he sucks. And I'm looking at him going, what can I learn? Like,
that's
how
it.
can I get better?
Yeah. Because you don't view it as a threat, right? It's not an egotistical thing. It's like, hey, the difference between me and this person is they're doing something that I'm not, or they understand something that I don't yet understand. Why look at them as a threat? They're an operating manual. Start dialing into the things that they're doing, right?
100%. And I think you might experience it too in the leadership world, like in terms of leadership training, etc. I believe there's room for everyone. There's room for everyone to thrive. But in my short time in New Zealand, you know, I've experienced other leadership companies essentially trying to ask me to shut down and just come and join them. I'm like, well, I'm not interested. Like, I want to support you guys and I'll send people your way that are the right fit for you. But I don't believe in this, like, crush your competition. I believe everyone can win, do your own thing really well, and there's room for everyone.
Yeah, I totally agree. That just seems to be such a scarcity mindset as opposed to an abundance mindset. There's plenty of fish in the sea for everybody, you know, metaphorically speaking. And aren't we more effective if we all fish together? Hey, what's up, guys? Just a quick note to say, hopefully you're enjoying the show. If you are, feel free to like and subscribe, and you can share it with your mates. You can also find us at LinkedIn and on Facebook, or check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz. Cool. That's all from me. Let's get back to the show.
Exactly.
And there's
100%.
that old saying, it gets thrown around a lot, but we believe in it really strongly around if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think negotiating win-wins and that old school, hey, we'll scratch your back, you scratch ours. I don't think there's not enough of that anymore. It's just such an individualistic society.
Yeah. And I think that you'll find if you stick to what, you know, that's a beautiful African proverb that you shared. Like if you stick to that mentality, I think you'll win in the long run. You know, there might be some challenges in the short run, but I actually think collaboration is going to be key as we go through geopolitical change right now with war is unbelievable. You got AI, which is growing at speed, which is exciting and daunting. But to navigate all of that, let's just work together. I think those are the people that'll win.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, you've had to navigate probably your fair share of criticism, and we spoke to that tall poppy and stuff before. James, how did you navigate that personally? Because it is hard just to shut it all out, you know, when people are saying this about you and that. How did you go about dealing with that? And what advice might you give to somebody that will face that themselves in the future?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think a couple of things, Chris. One, just you have to be really clear on what you want. What is it that you want? If you don't know what you want, then of course, if somebody gives you a bit of negative feedback or criticism, you might start to doubt, am I heading in the right direction? But if you're radically clear on what it is you want, your gold medal, the job promotion, the new relationship, exiting an old relationship, whatever your goal is, get really clear on it. Secondly, get people around you who genuinely want you to succeed. Like that's important. Like genuinely, you might have friends around you right now who actually behind your back don't want you to make the $1 million, don't want you to get that trip to New York. Don't like the list goes on. Get
Yeah.
people around you that celebrate deeply your smallest successes and your biggest ones. That they're there when you get off the plane and they've got the bottle of champagne and they're also there to pick up the pieces for you when everything turns to custard. To me, that's the key to getting through those people that are going to pick you apart. Know what you want and have a really good, tight community around you.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, it speaks to that. You're essentially the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And really interesting what you said there about sometimes you think friends and family and what have you, you know, they have your best interests at heart. And I think a lot of the times they do, and it doesn't come from a bad place. But like you say, you start moving on this trajectory and all of a sudden you're not the person that they once knew. And all of a sudden some insecurities start to creep in. And oh, do you know what? I actually liked the old James better because I was a bit more comfortable around the old James. And now that James is on this trajectory, it's starting to make me ask myself questions. Why am I not moving forward? And almost starts to reduce their excuses.
That happened when I stopped drinking alcohol. So coming from, Northern Ireland, it's kind of surprised when people say you don't drink. I was like, well, no,
Yeah.
not anymore. And that was probably the biggest challenge for most of my friends. Going from James, who's the happy-go-lucky guy, life of the party, he hosts St. Patrick's Day, to this guy who no longer drinks. And it was almost like I had left the tribe and this tribal mentality where like, you're no longer part of the tribe. Like you're very triggering. Go on, just have a drink. Go on, you'll have one with us, won't you? And it's so interesting just to watch that behavior. But replace alcohol with, changing careers or personal development or getting fit and healthy. It doesn't matter what it is. You're leaving the tribe, you're leaving the comfort zone. So I think you got to be prepared for that.
And I think as well, we've spoken to it a little bit around if you kind of need that, if you need those people patting you on the back and standing there with the sign saying you can do it, or, if you need that constant validation when you're going through the grind, and we're all going to go through it probably continuously, you just have to be able to do it alone or, with some people that you trust and without praise and without reward for extended periods of time.
That's right. I mean, it's about consistently doing it in the dark. A friend of mine, Anthony, he's an NFL player, and he says, do the work in the dark so that you can shine in the light. And he's like, stop posting to everyone that you're writing a book. Stop posting that you're doing a 4 a.m. workout. He's like, nobody cares. He's like, get on with the work. Nobody needs to know. And then when the competition comes up or the big job, you go and nail it. And I love that. I think that feedback is pertinent for Kiwis and for Northern Irish folk. Like, it's just great.
Yeah. And doing all those things is not doing the thing. If writing a book is it, then writing a post is not doing the thing.
Exactly. 100%.
Nice. And I'm real interested, man. Like you work with a lot of high performing people and leaders and things, leaders at the top of our world, essentially. But what are some things that those leaders are saying to you in private that they wouldn't necessarily let on about in the public domain? And we don't need names or anything, but what are some of those themes?
Yeah, I'd be in a lot of trouble, wouldn't I?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Couple of themes. One, that the people who you look at who you would say they're uber successful or they've got it all or they're a household face, often when they come to me, they are lacking the wealth that money can't buy, the peace of mind, the kids who still want to talk to them. There's a lot of these people that are super successful don't have kids that even want to look at them because they've never been around.
Yes.
They're very self-aware around how they be perceived publicly. So they've have one negative comment on Instagram out of 500,000 comments. They'll see that one and they'll stew on it and they'll get upset and angry and it'll sit with them for weeks. And I mean people that are running countries, people that are running Formula One teams, they're coming with these little issues like this one comment and they can't let it go. So they're very similar to you and I. They have the same issues, same challenges. The only people that don't are narcissists. They don't feel any pain. They don't think that anything could be wrong about what they do. Just ask them. But everyone else.
Legend in their own lunchbox.
Exactly. They really are. Yeah, there's a few of them out there. But most people that I work with, that's probably a big thing that they'd never share publicly. But behind closed doors, they are struggling and they are worrying. Where do I go next? And what does my next chapter in life look like? Most athletes I work with, what do I do after sport? Because sport could finish tomorrow with one bad injury. With politicians, it's like, what do I do after all of this? Like, where do I go? Does it get any better? Does it get any worse? Like, where do I go? So that's often I'm trying to help them get clear on what they want.
Yeah. It must be tough. Like if you've achieved the highest heights, whatever that is for you, or lived it on the edge, or, you've been an elite special operator for many, many years or an Olympic athlete, whatever, that all finishes. It has a shelf life. Like what does life after that look like? And how do you keep yourself engaged and not just descend into a pit of misery? Yeah.
100%. It's interesting. In my book, I talk about these pillars called pillars of WMI, what's most important. And it's something I ask all my clients to check in on. It's like, what would you rate yourself in your career this last month? Is it flying high? Is it awful? Enjoy. Like, for joy, are you 10 out of 10? Are is it horrific? Fulfillment, family, relationships, wealth. Like these things are really important because If you or I are broke, if we have no money, we're not having a good life. We're not performing well. If you or I have a relationship that's in tatters, we're not performing well. So it's about looking after these things. You know, we shouldn't have one basket, put all your eggs in one basket. We have 7 or 8 baskets. Like, let's make sure that we nurture them and check in on them at least once a month. Just say, what do they need? What do I need to do to show up? To me, the next chapter will be easy if you're always looking after these important baskets. And your baskets might be different than mine and vice versa. But there's certain things that are just really important. And if they're in shape, the next chapter won't be a problem.
Yeah, and I think those baskets change with time, eh? We all go through different seasons where a particular thing's important. Right now, me and my wife have got 2 young daughters. One's 8 months old, one's 4.5. So
Congrats.
family for me is still driver one. It will be forever, I believe. You know, that's a really hot burning plate right now, whereas somebody might have a family that's grown a little more and now they're trying to scale their business. Or, you know, we all have things that burn at different rates depending on the season we're in. And I think you're naive not to think that each of those things don't affect the other. You know, like you've said, if London's burning at home, it's going to be quite hard to go to work and kick goals.
100%.
Very hard to compartmentalize all of that unless you're incredibly mentally strong or maybe a little bit deranged.
Yeah, I think deranged probably. I wouldn't call it a strength. That's like
Yeah.
you're kind of delusional. It's interesting. The word high performance gets thrown around a lot. And
Yeah.
the way I look at it, like we got to define it. And to me, it's consistently exceeding norms whilst maintaining healthy relationships and well-being. To me, that's a high performer.
Yeah. And that's something I'm really curious about, and I'm glad that's come up. You've taken me there quicker than I'd planned, which I'm happy about. Is what type of messaging we're seeing so much in social media around high performance and this and that and content and posts and whatever. What is it getting wrong? Like, what information out there, in your opinion, is just out and out wrong or needs a bit of a fine tune, do you think?
Yeah, I'm anti-hustle. So at a certain point in my life, Gary Vaynerchuk, for those that don't know him, just search Gary V-V-E-E, and you'll see who he is. He's a bit of a legend and does incredible work, social media guru. He's built an empire. But at this stage in my life, I disagree with the fact that he is all about hustle and long hours and posting 27 times a day and responding to every message. And I absolutely disagree with that approach. The highest performers that I see, that I work with, are the ones who have great habits. They're not hustlers. They're not doing 500-hour weeks. Some weeks are bigger than others, but they know what's most important and they have habits. So that's probably the thing I see out there. It's like post lots and use ChatGPT to create all your content and post for you. My advice is don't, because it's just rubbish. And I can see, and you can too, if something's generated by a large language model, I do not want to read it. I will unfollow. I will scroll on. If a book is written by AI, I will not buy it. I want to know what Chris thinks of the world, how Chris was brought up, what Chris thinks about the Iran situation from a leadership standpoint. I don't care what ChatGPT has to say.
Yeah. And that's such a big one. And we've got a member of our team, Carsten Grimm. He's a clinical psychologist, ex-military pilot as well. So very interesting mix there. But he talks a lot around performance problems generally, or recovery problems, and the fact that the hustle and grind most of the time isn't the problem. It's the ability to switch it off, recover and regenerate, which our nervous system needs, right? We know these things.
Yeah.
And he was talking to me because it's a problem that I work on all the time. I'm definitely, the grind is not an issue for me, very driven. We have some massive goals we want to achieve, but turning that off and prioritizing and being really intentional with recovery is something that I'm starting to get from him. And he talks about it in terms of A weeks, B weeks, and C weeks. You'll be familiar. A weeks is when it's feeling great, right? You're super productive, things are going out the door. You know, you get huge dopamine hits from that. That's great, but it's not sustainable. The B week piece is around, yeah, okay, we're still getting things done, but it's at a very sustainable rate and we can manage our energy and we're feeling pretty good. And then the C week is when we prioritize that recovery piece. So whatever that is for you, extra meditation, extra physical training, you're saunaing more, you're cold bathing more, whatever works for you. It's a very individual thing, but that's where you prioritize that. And he was giving me personally caution around, hey man, like how many A weeks have you done back to back now? It's like too many was the answer. And you're going to have to get way more intentional around managing your energy because this bad boy is a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And can you speak to that? Have you been caught in that trap around trying to grind and pump for too long? And what did you do about it?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like the way I look at it is if you don't make time for health, you'd better make time for sickness. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit like you. If we were to do personality diagnostics, I imagine you and I'd be quite similar, very driven and want to achieve and be industrious and be helpful and be valuable. And that drives me. And I'm excited by that for my family, for my clients, for listeners. But there's a cost.
Yes.
So when I was starting up my business, I probably was anywhere between 70 to 100-hour weeks and didn't care. Like it was awesome. It was exciting. And as you say, dopamine and all the fun stuff that comes with it. Lack of sleep, who cares? And I started to get some issues. So I discovered like a lump in my chest and I was like, oh, what's that? So ended up discovering I had like a hormonal stress response. So I could still operate and thought it was fine. But my body was starting to say, actually, no, you've got too much cortisol in your system all the time. You got too much dopamine all the time. So I flew to LA, had a scan. They confirmed what it was. It wasn't cancer, thankfully, and started to realize I've got to prioritize recovery. I would fly to Auckland, 4:45 flight up in the morning, land, go and speak at a keynote in front of a couple hundred people, like jump in a taxi, go and speak at another one, fly back, then fly to Wellington, stay the night. It was chaos, right? So I started looking at it going, why don't I fly the night before? I'll have a massage in the morning. I'll do my keynote. I'll say that I'm only going to do 2 keynotes max on any given day. I'll then have time to work out. I'll maximize my steps. I'll walk places rather than taxi places. I started making the smallest changes, Chris. It wasn't rocket science. It was just tiny things. But I feel better. My health is better. My relationships are better for it as well.
Yeah, nice. That's good, eh? And I think, yeah, as I've just gone through 40 and 40 is the new 30 anyway, so it's all good. But learning that more that I don't have the petrol in the tank that 20-year-old Turks did, and I'm going to have to be far more intentional around how I manage that.
100%. I often tell my clients to take their meds. So once a month, what are your meds doing? So mental training is the M, exercise is the E, D is the diet, and S is the sleep. And so just in the last month, out of those 4, how are they going? 1 to 10. So are you
Yeah.
doing any mental training, meditation, mindfulness? Nah, I'm not. 0. How's your exercise going? Actually, I worked out 3 times this month. Okay, maybe that's a 2. Diet, yeah, no, I'm on point there. Nutrition's awesome. It's a 9. Sleep, I'm doing like 12-hour days. Okay, maybe it's a 5. So then I'll say whatever the lowest one is, just focus on that for the next month. Don't worry about focusing on all of them. If your lowest one is the mental training, just do a little meditation once a day for 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
that way we can actually start to additively compound our health rather than someone said to me today, I'm doing 75 hard. And I'm like, oh my God, not another one of those people. Why would you do such a thing? Like it's not sustainable, not long-term. Do the small things really well.
And how do you help people that are maybe a little bit obsessive by nature? Because sometimes you're going to have to be obsessive for a season if you want to do anything to a very high level. But how do you help people deal through not being overly obsessive and trying to optimize everything in their life and like gripping with white knuckles around control and stuff? How do you help people navigate that?
Yeah, well, there's a therapy called ACT, so acceptance and commitment therapy. And I often use it with athletes, but equally just with business leaders as well. Accept that you don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Accept that you don't have 100 hours in a day. Accept that you will fail sometimes. So I think that's the first thing. And then commit to doing what you know you can do, what is achievable. And this obsessive thing is a beautiful thing. I mean, that's why we get, the iPhone. Many people are listening right now on the iPhone. That was because we had one radically obsessed person called Steve Jobs who brought that to existence. The greatest sports team of all time, the All Blacks. I mean, you look at the stats, they just are. And whether they've won recently or not doesn't matter. They still are the best in the world ever. Well, we needed radically obsessed coaches and players to do that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think the problem comes when radically obsessed people are told you need work-life balance. And I'm like, are you serious? There's no such bloody thing as work-life balance. I disagree with it. So what I try and encourage people who have an obsessive kind of personality is that there's a work-life counterbalance. So that means you might have a couple of weeks, so you call them A weeks, right? So a couple of weeks of 60, 70, 80 hours of work, 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 performance, performance. But then you've got a way to check in on your diary, on your phone, and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. How are my pillars of what's most important? Those things we talked about earlier, Chris, the joy, the family, the fulfillment. How are those sitting? Oof, God, I'm doing a lot on the work and not a lot on the family or the health. Okay, counterbalance. This next week or two, I'm going to spend a little more time over here. And so to me, it's all about just counterbalancing. It's not about perfect balance, but realizing when you're out of whack and having a little system to come back into some sort of flow.
Like that. And what standards with all these leaders you're working with at the moment are you seeing them tolerate?
It's interesting. I did a global leadership study with leaders of Fortune 50 companies, political parties, sports team CEOs. And interesting, what they were saying was that the overall feedback was that they felt if they stepped away from their organization, the organizational structure wasn't solid enough and the leadership depth wasn't deep enough for that organization to thrive or even survive. So I would say that a lot of leaders right now, from a standards point of view, are accepting mediocrity in developing their people. That's one area that people are underinvesting in. They're not developing the leadership capability of the people around them. They're pretty good at investing in themselves, but developing the skill set, to me, that's the standard. That's nowhere near where it should be or could be.
So they've kind of accepted the fact that, hey, I'm not putting enough time into the people below me that will one day be my replacement. And they're kind of taking that on risk. Have I understood you there correctly?
Yeah, 100%. At the minute, they're too busy to do anything about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask why. Why do you think that is? Busyness obviously cropped up as an obvious one, but do you see any other reasons why they might be happy just to take that on the chin?
Yeah, I think human nature, we're egoic. And so often it feels good when people rely on us. You know, you look at one of the human core needs is significance.
Yeah.
And we want to feel like we matter. So when a whole organization or sometimes a whole country looks to us like, oh my goodness, you're running the show, maybe we don't want to give too many tasks out to other people. We do want to feel important. And we're happy to be the bottleneck and keep, everything the way it is, even though it's stressful, even though it's busy being busy. So I think there's a wee bit of ego in it for sure.
Yeah. And maybe that old one, knowledge is power. And, that's that control piece as well. And maybe fundamentally just a fear of being replaced or becoming insignificant.
100%. Well, I mean, people that read this 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, I mean, if you read that and you're not a little disturbed or disgusted, I mean, you're a psychopathic leader. I mean, that book is not a good thing. If you operate your life based on those laws, like you are going to be a very controlling leader. It's an amazing book for what it is. However, I don't think it's healthy for empathic leadership. We need more leaders who want others to grow and help others up and not always need to get the credit or be right. We have wars going on right now. And the one thing I would say, Chris, when we look around, how many of these wars have been started by countries with female leaders?
There wouldn't be many without looking at the data.
Yeah, it would be like very, 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 very small percentage. Us males tend to be very driven, protective of ego, need to be right. We don't tend to go into our feelings much. We kind of rather just keep it all up here. That's something I think our listeners today maybe could look at, is like how in touch with our feelings, whether they're male or female. But that's really what drives great leadership is, do I know what my emotions are doing? And can I manage them? And can I control the situation from a place of how can we all win?
Yeah, absolutely. And, leadership's never done. It's never clocked. It's the unwinnable game. People that have a fair amount of self-awareness understand that we're always evolving and working on different things. For me, it's being more grounded, being more present. Spoke to Mark Zimmerman quite recently, and he's an amazing guy. Yeah, one of his tips was just be where your feet are. Wherever your feet are, just be there. That's something I'm really working on personally at the moment is, if I'm with my daughters, be with my daughters. If I'm on a podcast with James, then I'm on a podcast with James. Be where your feet are, because I was literally the kid that got taken to Disneyland when I was like 10 years old. And we walked through the gates of the most magical place on earth. and I was asking my mum, "Hey, mum, what's for lunch?"
Yeah.
I'm that kid.
Love it. Always future focused.
Yeah, which means sometimes you can forget just to enjoy the moment, eh?
100%. I mean, I don't think you're alone with that. I mean, I'm guilty of that too. Yeah, be where your feet are. It's a great saying. I love that. A friend of mine, Scott, wrote a book called Be Where Your Feet Are. And it's just such a great reminder. Do the simple things well. Look down at your feet. Where are you? Just be there. And so I'm with Chris right now. I'm not with anyone else. It's like full noise. And I think it's quite freeing when you're super present.
Yeah. And this will be my last question for you today, James. But what are you working on at the moment? I have no doubt there's something that you're focused on right now. Are you willing to share that?
Yeah, a couple things. One super small thing, but I'm working on the audiobook of Habits of High Performers. So we released the book itself last August, and now finally getting around to doing the audiobook. So as a podcaster, you would have thought that was the first thing we did, but so that's coming out hopefully soon. And the other thing, which is a bigger project, is we've got a retreat later in the year in Queenstown. And so it's for leaders, CEOs, John Key coming down, former Prime Minister, got Kieran Reid, former All Black captain. We've got SAS hero, Jamie Pinnell. We've got the former, yeah, it's going to be awesome. We've got the former head of Adidas North America as well. So get down into nature, into the wilderness. And to me, that's where great leadership is learned. It's when we're doing things with others in nature. So we're really deep in the middle of planning that right now.
That sounds pretty exciting. And hey, man, no doubt some of the things that we've spoken about today has landed with people. How do they find out more about James Laughlin, or where can they find you, man?
Yeah, absolutely. Anywhere on, say, LinkedIn, Instagram, just go to James Laughlin and you'll see it come up. It's spelled Laughlin, Laughlin. And if they want to, they can check out Habits of High Performers. It's a book. If they're Kiwis or Aussies, they'll see it in any good bookstore or at the airport.
James, hey man, appreciate your time, and you're a legend. Really enjoyed the chat, and hopefully it's the first of many.
It definitely will be. Right back at you, Chris. Thanks for having me, mate.
Cool, thanks, man. Hey guys, if today's chat landed with you, then you can check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz, or you can follow us on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Hopefully you enjoyed the chat, and we'll see you again next time.